Election 2011 coverage on Manx Radio.
5 minutes to 8 this morning. Our candidate is from the constituency of Glenfaba, however you wish to pronounce it. Geoffrey-Boot stood unsuccessfully 5 years ago. We possibly don't have many air racing champions standing in this election. I think it possibly may be unique in that. A conservative background in the UK. Business interests include property, leisure and publishing. Worked for Midland Bank for a short time. He's 56, lives just outside St John's, but he's also steward of Sandgate Castle in Kent, a castle built by Henry VIII. Just to establish that's one of your homes as well, is it?
Good morning, John.
Good morning.
Yes, Sandgate Castle, I bought that about 11 years ago, and it is a second home.
So obviously the constituency will be wondering how often you actually will spend time in the Isle of Man if you've got a home down there.
Well, it's no secret that at the moment I spend a lot of time off island doing business and politics across and in Europe, but my commitment to the electorate is that if I'm elected, I will, within 7 days, have removed myself from most of those commitments, 95% of those commitments.
That's a promise.
That's an absolute promise, and the people I work with know it, and they all know my heart's in Manx politics.
You've been involved in conservative politics practically on your parents' knee. You grew up with politics.
I did indeed. My grandparents were on opposite sides of the spectrum, and we had some interesting political discussions when I was a youngster, and I became one of those young conservatives at a fairly young age.
Last time out, 5 years ago, you got 40% of the vote, so you weren't far off.
116 people changing their allegiance would have seen me elected, so it's all to go for this time, John.
So have you been round all the electorate this time again? Is it a continuous process?
It's not a continuous process because there's a break in between. There's no prizes for coming second, but I started my campaign in January, and I felt that I needed to know what the electorate were thinking, what their aspirations were, so I conducted a complete electors survey, and that was quite revealing, and I'm now on the foot campaign, as it were, and that's also quite revealing as well.
You recommend an influx of new members to bring new blood, I suppose, into the government, but having all these new members come in at the same time, that's a recipe for chaos considering what we're facing, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. If you look at how administrations change in America and the UK, new administrations, new ideas, yes, you need some experience, but the analogy I use with experience is, if you employ an architect to build a house, and when he completes it, it's in poor state, the roof leaks and the walls are dodgy and the foundations aren't very good, you don't go back to him to sort the problems out.
So we need new blood in?
We definitely need some new blood, yes.
You say it's time we stood up for ourselves and imposed Manx solutions. What is a Manx solution?
Well, I think there's two elements here. First of all, I think we lack representation at political level in the UK. I go to party conferences every year, and
well, so do we now. The government sends representatives to practically each one.
Yeah, I'd like to come across them on occasions, because the Gibraltars have a stand there, the Falkland Islanders have a stand there, they hold receptions, and they're obviously networking with the UK politicians, and we don't seem to do that very well. So I think that's the first thing we need to address, build some connections at Westminster. I go there, I do business from time to time, and I know there is a disconnect. But Manx solutions are all about building legislation and regulation around requirements in the Isle of Man, not absorbing the stuff from the UK or EU.
Let's move on to local issues in Glenfaba. What would you say are the key issues concerning your constituents?
Well, according to my elector survey and what I find on the doorstep, people feel there's a disconnect between the MHK government, if you like, and the constituents. They want someone that will stay in touch, send out regular newsletters, will deal with them.
So more concerned with domestic issues for Glenfaba rather than the international, because you obviously are very concerned with international.
I am as well, but I'm also very concerned at dealing with things at constituency level, and when it comes to things like roads in Foxdale, pavements, planning, and particularly in a rural constituency,
you will deal with them.
I will deal with them. I guarantee I will deal with them.
You say email is going to be one of your key weapons. You will be sending all your constituents emails, regular emails?
No. Emails are not my key weapon. I think newsletters are my key weapon, and face-to-face surgeries where people, who can't write letters or don't like picking up the phone can speak to me about their problems. But a good website and email are additions to the armoury.
What about the 5 years ahead?
Difficult, very difficult. £189 million vanishing. That's £2,365 per person, or probably over £5,000.
The message is cuts, isn't it? We're going to have to tighten up very severely.
There are going to have to be some cuts, and where they'll come, don't ask me at the moment, because I haven't seen the books, and I know that the Pink Book gives one story, and sometimes when you get into office, you look behind the scenes and it's a different story.
But you'll be having a close look.
I will indeed.
Mr. Boot, Geoffrey-Boot, thank you very much for joining us, candidate in the Glenfaba constituency. It's 8 o'clock.